for tuning in, and you're watching Yana TV. And today we have a very special episode because we have several guests, and all of them are incredible women who are making a difference in the life of others through their businesses.
The heart of networking is building great relationships with people that want to help you and that you want to help.
Because the worst thing any small business can do is just blanket market people.
Work on your network, because by talking to people, interacting, that's where ideas start growing.
Don't try and do everything yourself. If it comes to a point where you need somebody's real professional advice or professional services, you should invest in that.
I believe in radiance and being alive and aware and awakened.
As long as I'm doing something that connects people and has something to do with the empowering of people, that through knowledge, as long as I know I'm impacting people's lives positively, I'm happy.
So why would you think, you always said that networking is very important for business. So why is that?
Well, the funny thing is I was new to networking once as well, and I was really, really new to business when I first started at the Athena Network in the UK, which was about 10 years ago now. And I really just like people, and I love business. I love entrepreneurship and the idea of entrepreneurship, especially for women, because I think that it's a liberator. It's a way for us to be able to follow our dreams, reach our goals, but not necessarily be tied down to working constraints. So I think for entrepreneurship, networking is something that we can really use as a catalyst to grow our businesses. And it's something that I learned over the years. All of my best business deals, transactions, most lucrative sort of partnerships have all come through networking relationships. But that's really what all networking is about. It's about building really great relationships where you can work together and achieve more. So I think there's a bit of a negative connotation around networking. People think about it as the business card exchange and very
forceful interaction,
very transactional. But really, the heart of networking is building great relationships with people that want to help you and that you want to help. And so, once you start to think about networking in a slightly different way, it can really help in your business.
So then how do you build a relationship? Like if you could maybe think about 3 tips for people who may be a bit shy to network. So what could help them to actually go get themselves out there and start talking to people?
I think really, certainly at the Athena Network, we have a very collaborative mindset. So rather than worrying too much about, the very technical parts of networking, I think come to a networking event or be part of a community where you're really thinking about where you can add value, how you can help people. It never ceases to amaze me how women don't think they can add value, and sometimes that holds them back. I think depends on where they've come from in their background, but they'll often say, I really want to join, but I'm not sure what I can give back. But actually just listening and bringing your expertise to the table and being someone who's willing to just support and encourage somebody else is a really great networking skill. And listening out to hear who you can connect. So being a connector is a really important skill. And just not worrying too much about the technicalities of getting the business card and following up. Of course, all of those things are important. They come later, but they're really just technicalities. The most important thing is just being yourself. For anything that you do, it's really important to have some kind of goal. It's really great to come along to a networking session where you meet great people and you make friends and you learn something or you get inspired. But at the end of the day, it's really easy to look back at a year of intensive networking and realize that you didn't really get, or you don't think you got anything out of it. So if you go into a networking event, or even if you join a membership organization like the Athena Network with some kind of goal in mind, at least you can track back and measure whether or not you were successful at the end of the day. You will know.
I would know, of
more
course,
about
yes.
this as a coach. It could be something like just build your confidence. If you're a really shy person, your goal could just be I'm going to make an effort to go to at least one networking event a month and meet 2 new people. Could be a really simple goal. It could be I'm going to go to a networking event and I'm going to practice, moving around the room and speaking to different people that might be outside of your comfort zone. Or it might be something like public speaking. There are lots of opportunities to practice public speaking. That was one of my challenges when I joined. I wasn't shy. I didn't have any problem with meeting people, but I did have a real fear of public speaking.
Did you?
So I found it really difficult to get up and, introduce myself. And so I really, for my whole first year of networking, that was my goal.
How did you overcome that? Because I know many people can actually relate to that. I mean, fear of public speaking and just getting yourself out there and introducing yourself. For those who are not professional speakers, people often struggle with that. So how did you overcome
It was
this?
a really frustrating thing for me because I'm definitely not shy and I'm definitely a real people person. So I was really comfortable in any setting with, just having conversations with people. But the part of networking where at some events you need to stand up and introduce yourself and your business, I found it really nerve-wracking. So it was a combination of things. I mean, on one hand, it was being in the right environment again, where I felt more comfortable. So even though I was still nervous, I wasn't petrified because everybody was there to support and the structure was there to help people grow.
So you talk about the environment,
The environment.
right? So when you have a supportive environment, what Athena has,
Exactly.
so it is just much easier to confront your fears.
Absolutely.
Because then even, we're all afraid to make mistakes, but like if you fall, then people are not going to punish you for that. They're going to pick you up, dust you off, and help you to get better.
And we actually make a real big point of that at Athena. We encourage our members to speak and to present a short topic on their area of expertise. And it's really not about being an experienced public speaker, because if you've never been a public speaker or you've never had an opportunity to do public speaking, then how could you possibly practice?
Of course.
So this is a stage where we say, look, everybody has expertise and everybody has something to share of value. And so we just really want to give you the opportunity to, use the platform to actually practice. And so we do that. And some ladies take a little bit more encouragement, but it's really great to see ladies coming out of their comfort zone and sort of doing that kind of thing. And there are also other communities which are around tech startup or around, retail and fashion. And so go and find these communities and just immerse yourself in other people's knowledge and experience.
So then the step number one would be at least get out of the house. Do research, find out community that are good for your interest, then get out of the house, actually go and meet people and talk to them at least, and then see how your idea evolves.
Yeah, there's so much research that you can do online, but there's nothing like speaking to people and asking them what they think of something and throwing ideas around.
What is your biggest dream, Gina, so far? Professionally.
Oh my gosh.
What you really, really would like to see happen?
Yeah, I mean, I love this concept of Daniel's with the global kitchen table, global small business, which I've now adopted as a global kitchen table. I'm just thinking that, to see more women thinking bigger, not necessarily huge, like IPO, Facebook size, but definitely thinking about their knowledge and how they can package this up in a different way than consulting or training or one-on-one, because the thing
because
is,
you can't scale those
you
businesses.
can't scale
Yes,
it. And most women are looking for impact. They don't they don't leave their really high-paid corporate job because they want to become a millionaire necessarily. Maybe they would like to become a millionaire. It's not that they wouldn't like to become a millionaire, but they leave because they want to do something more purposeful. And they want to make an impact and they want to help people. And that's really very much a driver. And so I think that, that's great if you want to help 10 people a month, one-on-one, but think a little bit bigger, because if you could amplify that up and help 100 people or 1,000 people, then your impact will be bigger. And so I'd just love to see more impact.
I know that it is a very, very modern topic right now. There are many women, because I think we want to become more successful, and there's also an opportunity now when you can have both. You can success and you can also have the family. So what I see happening in the world, that more and more women decide to leave corporate world. With all respect to the corporate world, but just to have the balance with the family.
It's just the flexibility to be able to work when you want to work, not between the hours of 9 and 6. It's, you can do your work in an evening, you can be with your family during the day, you can just be flexible.
And the reason why I wanted to talk about this, because it sounds a bit like a beautiful dream, right? But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when you're in a job from 9 to 5, you think, well, if I only would be self-employed, I can do so many more things with my kids and my husband and with my friends and my parents. But if you could just share what happens in reality, right? Because then when you leave the job and you become an entrepreneur, so what are the initial challenges that you feel that women are usually facing when they're making this decision?
Well, for me, the challenges were very much about resources. So I'd left big companies where people did things for me. So like IT, I never had to worry about. I just rang the IT department and, you know, all of those sort of things. And suddenly I was working on my own, so I didn't have a team anymore. So there's the loneliness challenge that you have to overcome initially. And then there's also the resources challenge. You're back to doing everything yourself. You wear every hat in your business. So you're the finance director and you're the IT director all at the same time. So
and the secretary.
So I think those are very challenging things to have to look at when you first start out, because you've got your idea, you want to run with it, you're very passionate about what you do, but you've also got the challenges of running a business, getting sales, meeting people, networking, business development, all of those type of things. So the hours that you think you have in the day, in reality, you don't have. And of course, the biggest sacrifice you probably make at that stage is financial. So you've gone from your corporate world salary to earning your own money. And the disparity between those two at the beginning is big.
That's what we hear very often from many entrepreneurs, that you have to invest a lot financially, and usually it takes much more time that you expected it would.
That's right.
So is there any, like, how do you deal with that? You know, like, have you figured out by now any kind of strategy or just tools that you are using that help you to move forward?
Well, for me, I'm a planner and I'm very organised, which I think helps. So I just structure my week in terms of thinking about the different bits and pieces I have to do for my business. So I set aside a couple of hours on a Friday morning always to do the financials, the bookkeeping, the expenses and all of that. And I have set times I network with people, and then I have blocks of time that I actually do the work. And that's the only way to manage it really, or else you end up what I call sprinkling things. And if you do that, then jobs don't get completed and you end up probably being in a worse state than you are if you actually just take the time and do it while it's there.
Okay, that's an interesting way to go about it. Have you learned to outsource or delegate by now certain things? So how important, or you know, even how realistic it is? Because I know one of the challenges for entrepreneurs is resources, right? So you have this. You need people, but then you have to pay people.
Yes.
and it's a bit like a circle. So on one hand, you don't really want to do everything yourself, but then the moment you employ somebody, you have to either produce revenues, or you have to get your saving money and just pay their salary until your business kicks off and you really start making, you know, some revenues.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And like, is there any way to make this process easier?
Well, for me, the products that I sell, I technically do the work myself. So if I'm, for example, facilitating for 5 days in a week, then nothing else gets done because I'm stood up in the classroom in front of people doing the facilitation.
Sharon, what are you passionate about? Like, if you say, what you really stand for?
I'm very passionate about helping people, and I want to do that in an entrepreneurial way. So I've taken all the foundations I've built in financial services over the years, and I've brought those out to going into small to medium-sized businesses and helping them to develop their own strategies and see whether their businesses can grow. So I'm really passionate about that on a professional side. In terms of personal, travel, family, love, all of those things are what I'm passionate about.
That we're all passionate about. And
So,
you know, if you could maybe give us like 3 tips, because I know you specialize, like it's marketing, it is technology behind the marketing, right? So, and what we say, especially for small businesses, for kitchen table entrepreneurs, what we call it these days, technology is vital part of business development. So maybe if you could give us like 3 tips for women who are running their businesses, how they could maybe improve their business or enlarge the scale, or something they should be just aware of in terms of technology?
I think in terms of technology in business, I think one of the key things for small businesses, and especially people starting out, is to make sure that you build the right foundations, because going back to do it afterwards is difficult. So have a good CRM system, I would say. So as you get clients and relationships and contacts, that you manage those and keep them. Because what's really important from a marketing communication piece as the business grows is be able to segment those people into who you want to talk to about what products and services. Because the worst thing any small business can do is just blanket market people. So I would definitely say from a technology perspective, build the right systems in the background and collect the data properly. Because when you start to email people, you need to then evaluate the results of those emails that you're sending out to feed back into future strategies. Evaluation is key, and you only get evaluation from data. So the collection of data is vital.
Starting your own business is not always that easy. You need to kind of have guts to do it.
So it requires courage.
Yeah, exactly, courage. Yeah, so the idea is one thing, but then I think my husband believed in the idea even more than I did, and I guess I kind of did it because he was just so so living through it and coming back from work and saying, oh, you're so lucky, you can do your own thing, and
so he was empowering you. It's important to have somebody who
yes,
believes.
I think somebody who believes in you and the idea is really what's a must. And then in Singapore it's like a pretty open society. They really are keen and for people to start their own companies. They make it pretty easy. So setting up the name in the company, that was done in like 2 hours. But then the first challenges started when I needed to recruit people, the barrier language, the finding a space, communicating with the guys at the wet market. So lots of challenges, but all challenges that made me actually grow and better. So every single challenge, I kind of like just embraced it and thought, if this is along the way, it's just to make me better and to make the business better. And so far, that's the attitude I've been having, because otherwise you, I think, give up after the first challenge.
Yes. So how do you go through your days? Because I also find that we women, we tend to be just a bit maybe more emotional about, and we identify with our business a lot.
Yes.
It's a bit like having a baby,
yes.
right? You have babies, and then you have your business. It's like a baby.
Yes.
So if your baby is doing well, you're happy. If your baby is doing not so well, or you're having a just down day, then you're not so happy.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? How do you go through your days?
It's very tough. In the beginning, I was always taking it very personally. When somebody was giving like feedback, I felt they were attacking me. But I think with time, I kind of learned to make the difference. One thing I do is after 6 p.m., I don't check my work email anymore. Just because in case there are any issues or negative, I don't want to know until the next day, because it just ruins my evening. It ruins
then you can
my
sleep
night.
probably.
I'm like in bed and I'm like, oh my god, I'm thinking.
I do the same, so that's why I don't check it in the evening either.
Exactly. And then just learning by experience, learning to deal with these issues, talking to other business owners who can like put it into perspective, say like, oh, this happened to me, and people will always complain, or there will always be issues, but don't worry about it. The next day is another day. It's another challenge, and
you just learn.
You just go with the flow.
You just go with the flow. And Sabine, I know that there are many women out there who at the moment stay-at-home moms, right? And I mean, I totally respect the choice and journey when a woman decides to have children and decides to be a kind of dedicated mom and be there for children. But then usually when children start growing up a bit, then they want to go back and maybe going back, it would not be available for the big company, especially maybe like in Singapore, for example, right? So probably entrepreneurship would be just a good option for them. But they are maybe not sure, or they're a bit afraid, So what advice could you give them for those stay-at-home moms?
First thing would be to work on your network, because by talking to people, interacting, that's where ideas start growing. So definitely join a couple of networking. Women only are good ones as well, because if you're in the same kind of group and the same ladies, you might like identify yourself to those stories. And then secondly, look into e-commerce, because I think e-commerce is really, you can do it from your home.
Okay, 6 years, that's a long time, the 6 years. So, but I know for many aspiring entrepreneurs, what they all want to know about mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we talk about success, it all sounds great, and it's like it's all on papers out there and people applause. But the reality of entrepreneurship is not that. The reality is a lot of hard work every day. And because also when you start your own company, you're not necessarily having all the skills required to run it, right? So you have to learn it along the way.
Exactly.
So clearly we do make mistakes. So maybe if you could share like one or two you feel biggest mistakes you have made and how you learned from them and you actually leverage to elevate your company. So what would that be?
I think when you have an idea and you run with it, yeah, that's what we call the bootstrap way, right, for entrepreneurs. At some point, you need to really sit down and make sure that you're covered in terms of like financial strategy, the paperwork stuff, not so sexy stuff, the legacy planning, what happens, especially if you're in a partnership and everything. These things are something that you need to look at some point. Earlier the better, of course. If you have a partnership, make sure that, everybody's clear on what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, there's no issue with responsibilities.
Yeah, and everybody is accountable, everybody's on the same page, everybody's performing. Those things are very important, especially when you have partners involved. I wouldn't say there's like a really big mistake we've done so far, but probably we would
Keeping the
have
fingers crossed.
yeah, exactly. No major mistakes, but I think there were some things that we should have looked at earlier,
like for example,
the financial strategy thing, protecting yourself, in terms of like the contract.
You mean IP or contract?
Just normal business dealings.
Okay.
Like the contracts and everything. I think if we had addressed these things earlier, we would have probably grown a lot faster.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that when you set up your own business, so do not underestimate the importance of paperwork, because
the admin.
Yeah.
Not so sexy.
Yeah, not so sexy stuff. Clearly.
I mean, we just want to go out there, get partnerships. Get the jobs, do business development. But that's the very exciting parts of things. But then don't overlook the administrative side of things. Yeah.
Okay, so is there an easy way to deal with the administrative side of things? Like, how do you do this? Do you outsource it, or you have somebody within the company who's doing it?
I think if you're a small company, you should outsource it, because this is not something that you need constantly. But just make sure you find somebody who understands where you're at, understands where you want to go, somebody you trust, of course. But these things can be outsourced. I think entrepreneurs have this flaw as well, like they try and do everything themselves, me included.
We're all guilty.
And then at one point you just go, okay, I'm so stressed out and I'm not getting anywhere, and then that's when you realize that, okay, I can't do it alone. So that's where you have all your partnerships and everything. And if you need to, don't try and do everything yourself. If it comes to a point where you need somebody's real professional advice or professional services, you should invest in that. Yeah.
So don't be stingy about that.
Don't be stingy about that. I somebody once told me that you need to spend money to make money, and it's very, very true. It's not about like just spending, like, look at my swanky office and everything. It's really spending on things that are crucial.
So it means you're also talking, it's important to know what are your strengths, right?
Yes,
because then you really have to know yourself very well and to know, like, okay, I'm good at that specific skill set. So everything what is outside of that, I better either invest or outsource or partner with somebody. So then I can just make it much faster in terms of business development.
Exactly. And I mean, if somebody who's professional can do it in one day and then you're taking 10 days, it's like, it doesn't make
no-brainer, clearly.
No economical sense, right? And also, you shouldn't be spending your time on doing things that don't, like, you should be doing business development as a business owner, right? Don't spend time. It's opportunity cost.
Okay, opportunity cost,
Yeah, like trying to design your own website and everything. You should be out there networking with people instead of like pulling your hair out and getting stressed out over, a website that you don't know how it works. Yeah.
So basically it means being an entrepreneur, it does require personal courage, right? And it does require financial commitment. Really, because then you really have to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's important. You really have to believe in.
I believe in radiance and being alive and aware and awakened and in well-being, and those are the three or the words that then came together. But I felt that I wasn't ready to share that with others. I thought that the spiritual climate wasn't yet quite mature enough, but I feel that now it is. So some of the aspects of my work include alternative therapies, and spirituality is a big part of that. But a few years ago when I talked about that, I was getting blank looks and a bit of a not quite ready for it. And as of last August, so that would be August 2014, I felt a shift. I started to talk more about the spiritual aspect and about creating a holistic network of service and providers in Singapore.
That's what you're doing right now.
Which is one of the objectives I have. And amazingly, it was yes, yes, yes. Everyone was yes. And I thought, what happened? Like, some of these are the same people I've been talking to for years, for 7 years. And now all of a sudden it's a yes. And some people were new, and they're like, yeah, sure. That sounds completely normal. So now I feel ready to also embrace that spiritual part of my work.
And if you could maybe share with us a bit of your personal journey, because I know that very often, especially when we decide to become an entrepreneur, right, we choose something where we feel this is our calling and this is our passion, and that's why we are doing it. So what is the deeper why behind what you do?
The deeper why behind it is that it's my life. This is what I live and breathe day in, day out, and it's what I do best. And it's something I can do authentically. There is not a moment in my work where I feel I'm not telling a truth, and if I catch myself, I something must have changed, and then I have to reevaluate. So the story behind it is that I was actually groomed to become a diplomat. So I studied...
It would be amazing. The diplomatic world lost such a great figure. Well, good for us. We gained somebody in the holistic world.
yeah, someone pretty diplomatic, although I'm a bit out there sometimes, aren't I?
Yes.
Yeah. So I studied international relations and peace and conflict research and sinology. And I did start out at the Foreign Ministry in the Human Rights Department, and then went on to the Finnish League for Human Rights.
That's impressive.
And I thought it was great. I loved it. But then we moved to China because of my husband's work, and I started to do volunteer work there in orphanages and fundraising for children living under the poverty level for medical and educational needs. And then we moved to Singapore, prior to which I had my 30s crisis, and that's when the whys and what's the purpose of my life and all that.
Do we have it now 10 years earlier than it used to be? Now you have it in 30s?
I had it in my 30s, very clearly.
Okay.
And when we moved to Singapore, I literally shut myself off from most of the world for 6 months. And I did a lot of introspection. I started meditation. I just questioned everything. At the same time, because my children and I had a lot of health problems, I decided that enough with the antibiotics and enough with all the medication we were on, and we came with everything. And I started to look into alternative forms of healing and self-treatment, stuff that I could do at home as well as therapies I could go for. And we had an amazing improvement in our health. So I got rid of asthma. My daughter's digestive problems disappeared.
How often this also happens with us when we actually do find our life calling, right? I mean, it's very common that, particularly in the holistic industry, when we want to first check it on ourselves and our family, right, and see if it really works. And then when we see real life success, what you see in your family, then the probably instinctive reaction would be to share with the world, because we know how amazing it is and it works. So now you want everybody else to know about that. That's true. Great.
And I was sharing anyway, so I thought, why not
profession out of it, right?
Exactly.
So it would be interesting maybe for some women out there, you know, who right now could just view something as a hobby and maybe just something they're doing anyway, and they're living it every day, and they make sure their family lives it every day. Would be interesting for them to maybe just ask yourself, can I make a profession out of it? Because then it also gives you flexibility, right? Again, and we keep coming to the topic, for those women who have family, that I know you do, so to balance family and work. So what you are doing is it's amazing, because then you take your calling and you take your natural gift. So it's not something you have to actually artificially develop. You have it already, but you just learn how to make a business out of it.
What is my purpose in life, right? What is it that I love doing, right? And from young, you know, the subjects that drew me, in was biology, was literature, and I realized that the common denominator was that it's all about life, it's all about people, it's all about, bringing of people together. I love to talk to people, but on a deeper level. I love engaging in conversations and knowing people and listening and figuring out what they're thinking. It matters to me. Yeah, so I've always had the deep set interest in that, and so I realized that in whatever I do, it really doesn't matter what industry I'm in, as long as I'm doing something that connects people and has something to do with the empowering of people, that through knowledge, as long as I know I'm impacting people's lives positively, I'm happy. And
Lisa, I think you're just an amazing example of how can you breathe in passion into a relatively traditional profession, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, if all, let's say, accountant or lawyers or I don't know what other traditional professions are out there, bankers, so if they would just embrace the same attitude, and because we always, there's this distinction in terms of work, then we say some professions usually those that are more creative, this is when you have more passion, right? You would say, okay, artists are passionate, writers are passionate, performers are passionate, but if you then talk about more traditional business, there's clearly lack of passion there, and that's why many people are actually leaving the job. Because now there's also this trend when everybody wants to do something unconventional. But when I actually look at you and I'm like, wow, you found it. I'm like, exactly. I'm like, you can take something conventional and make it very unconventional. I think it's amazing.
I used to think that creativity was creating something new out of nothing. And then I realized, so I thought myself as, no, I'm not the creative sort. But then I realized that creativity can also be, gathering ideas from outside of the industry and then, incorporating it into what you're doing, and then turning, creating something new and out of what you're doing. So, making, pushing the traditional limits also. So, traditionally people think that dentists are just, looking at the teeth, but at DP Dental we look beyond, we ask questions, your teeth is rooted in your gums are related, you're connected with, muscles, and so we are now in the business of helping people who have headaches, neck shoulder aches. You'd never think of traditionally looking at the dentist to solve these issues.
Well, I never knew about it before I met you, so.
Yes, but, we delve into the root cause, and sometimes the root cause isn't just evidently where that problem is, it lies somewhere else. So it's just, it's just about understanding, about your body is a systemic whole, okay? And then as individuals also, you are operating in a community, in a network, and so my job is about connecting, the people, but through knowledge, through education.
And I love it. And, I keep coming back to that because for me it is right now actually great revelation, when I'm listening to you, because, we have this saying that the grass is always green on the other side, right? And what I can see very often, then people say, oh, if I could only do that, or if I could only change my job, then my life would be much better. But actually, when I'm listening to you, then I'm thinking to myself, well, you don't have to do this. You don't necessarily have to change the place you're in life. You might just change the way you approach it. And then if you could choose to add more creativity and more passion in where you are, you could have a very creative and passionate job if you're a dentist, or if you're again accountant or lawyer, or any kind of more traditional profession. So it's all how you perceive it.
Yeah, go out and meet people. That's why I know you through the network, and I love it because I get to meet so many people from a lot of very different diverse, background and experience. And I get ideas also, from people outside of the industry that I can then inject into my own. I think that's how it is. It's wonderful, isn't it?
And that was amazing women from Asina community who shared generously their tips and wisdom on how to create an amazing business for yourself. So go for your dreams, unlock your gifts, take a good care of yourself, and until next time, live fearlessly.
Success comes with a lot of pain, a lot of patience, a lot of endurance, perseverance, and really doing it. Ultimately, you'll get some form of success, right? But we also celebrate every little success that we have.